picked Sickboy because I wanted all people that nobody ever seen before. I'm a firm believer in that you want to have people, you know, if you're going to do, I hate when they retread an act. Like, I really hate that. There's nothing wrong with somebody, you know, coming back as somebody different, but send them away 6 months, a year, and then bring them back. But don't just, you know, 1 week they're this, the next week they're that. You can bring in somebody we've already seen before, but we've already seen them before. You know what I mean? So I wanted to bring in people that nobody knew, but who had talent. And so Sickboy was really talented, ton of potential. Just never worked out for him. I didn't want anybody else except Saturn, I don't think. You know, I didn't want Ron Reese because, you know, he'd been, you know, because he'd already done the thing with, you know, the Hogan thing, whatever. I didn't want Hammer because everybody knew who Hammer was. I didn't want Riggs because he was the American Males. I didn't want Kidman. But that being said, Kidman was awesome. I mean, okay, Kidman was a pain in the ass in the back because he just didn't respect the hierarchy of the business. And he could say I was a pain in the ass, that's fine. But he didn't respect the hierarchy of the business. But Kidman was a great addition once you put him in the you know, in the filthy outfits. And although, see, the problem, like the scratching himself, he hated doing that. It was so over. He just didn't get it. You know what I mean? If 5 years later, he'd have been beyond brilliant in the character. You know what I mean? He was good. He was great as it was. But he also was, you know, like the whole time he's like, you know, you guys, why come you always win? Why can't we ever get a win? It's not up to me, you know. I'd ask Sullivan, I'd go, you know, I'd even go to Sullivan and go, hey, can you get these guys some wins? And he's like, some must die so that others can live. And, you know, so I think that also hurt us too, was the fact that, you know, my guys would always lose singularly, you know. So I got a collection of, you know, but that's as high as they ever let me go on the card. That being said, I don't think there's ever been a more over group that lost every single outing. You know, of all my flock members, they lost like every outing, and still were incredibly over because they were all talented. Well, not all talented. Kidman was incredibly talented. Hammer was, you know, Page forced Hammer on me, and luckily Hammer had a great look, and it worked out okay. Ron Reese was forced on me, and I like Ron, and so I'm glad he got an opportunity. You know what I mean? And Riggs I wouldn't have chosen, but I'm glad because he was my friend. I'm glad that he got the job. So it all worked out in the end. Plus, once we did the angle with him, and then we put his eye out, you know what I mean, or injured his eye, and he wore the patch and the whole 9 yards. It was pretty good. So I mean, so that I had no problem with once we actually did, once it worked out the way it did. If I would have had my druthers, I would have rather had me, Sickboy, Saturn, and one more person who would have been 280, 290 as our muscle, our Terry Gordy, so to speak, But, you only get what they give you, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to complain because, man, it was great. They paid me, 6 figures to go sit in the front row of the audience and watch TV every Monday night, so I can't argue with that.